This video is to explain how to know where to start the pantograph once you have advanced your quilt. I've just finished stitching 2 rows of cats. You can see them up on the screen. So I stitched across and stopped, and then I started again and stitched back. I didn't want a connector line on the right edge there. This is a Quilts for Kids, and the binding will be the back folded over, so I didn't want my stitching to go past the edges on this one, since the backing will be used to fold over for the binding. This was my starting stitch on the pantograph. So now I want to measure from where I first began the pantograph up to where the highest stitch is. So I used a little ruler and I measured and I marked it. So that's what that little green mark is, just measuring where is the highest mark. And then I used my little ruler to measure from there down to where I first started, and it's 4 1/8. So now I'm going to want to measure from where the lowest mark, the lowest stitch is on that second row. I can look up here and tell they're very faint grid lines, but I can tell that the bottom of the ball is the lowest stitch, and it's just slightly below that stitch mark. So once I advance, I'm going to do the 4 1/8 that I got from up here. I'm going to measure slightly below that and do 4 1/8. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and just mark that right now, so that that will be my first guesstimate spot once I advance. So I'm going to take my stuff off. This is these are leader grips, side grips from leader grips. They're wonderful. I have them on both sides, so they do a great job of keeping the edges nice and firm. Gosh, the thing is all caught up under there. They really are great to have. Anyway, we'll get these off, and then I'm going to go ahead and advance the quilt, and then we'll start the video back up. The quilt has now been advanced. I've got everything set up and the side grips on. So now I do want to base down the edges before I stitch. So I'm going to do that first. I go into my toolbox right there, and it does that a lot. It'll say use your face timed out, say okay, and then just hit the toolbox again. And now I'm going to release the sewing machine. I'm going to do that. And so now I don't want to touch okay until I am ready to go back into my program. So I have control of the machine, and you can see that I can set it however I want to. So I'm going to change my stitches to be 4, and I'm just picking a spot. I'm not going to I'm just picking a spot so that I can hurriedly sew this basting. It did more than one stitch. Hang on. Okay. So now I'm just going to stitch down as far as I can. Stop it. And I'm going to do the other side, but to save time on the video, I'll come back with you when I've got that done. Okay, so I have basted down the right side in the border. All of these basting stitches I will be taking out, since I'll be folding the backing over. So now we're ready to give the control of the machine back to the program. So now I'm going to say okay. So now it's back to quilt motion. I need to make sure how well this little spot that I marked where I had measured from the beginning stitch to the top stitch in that first row, I need to make sure that this is going to work close enough to the bottom of that second row. So I'm going to trace. I'm going to put it right there where I marked, and I'm going to say trace. It always asks if the needle is up. So I want to watch the tail of the cat, and especially the cat's ears. And you know what? I think it's a little low. So I'm going to stop it. So I say stop, and I'm going to say finished and back to placement, and it asks, am I certain? And I'm going to say yes, because it wants to make sure I'm okay with resetting it. But what I'm going to do now is, instead of starting it there, I'm going to nudge it up a little higher, because I want it to nest a little closer to that second row. So now I'm going to say start my stitching there, but now I've got it in the pink, so I have to shift it down a touch. So I'm shifting it down a little bit, and I'm going to reset it. So now I'm going to try this, now that it's not pink anymore. So I've got it a little bit higher, and I'm going to say trace. You can see that the cat ear is actually the very highest point. So I want to see where that cat ear is going to hit. Uh-oh, it went too high. So I just need to stop that. Finished, back to placement, yes. So I did bad. So I'm going to come back here and barely make it higher than where I first started. So I'm going to trace again. This is the time-consuming part, getting that exact spot of where to start. But once you get the exact spot, then you can measure from that point to, that's hit kind of high, didn't it? Well, we're going to stop it again. Finished, back to placement. Are you sure? Yes. And I'm actually going to go right back to where we had it originally. I thought it was too high, but apparently I think it was just right. So I'm going to go with that, and I will tell it to start stitching. And then what I will do now is I'm going to measure from the ending stitch of that second row. I'm going to move this for the moment. So the ending stitch from right down here is probably, I'm going to end up doing it a 4 1/4. So from now on, every time I end a row that's prior to advancing the quilt, I'm going to mark that, and then I'm going to measure down 4 1/4. And that will be where I begin each new row until I get to the bottom of the quilt. So it will go much faster than what we did just then. And depending on the pattern and how you nest it, sometimes it goes faster, sometimes it goes slower. But it's really critical that that you get this measurement from the ending stitch of that second row to where you want the beginning stitch of that next row. Just take your time and be patient getting that exactly like you want it, so that you don't have too wide an area between the second and third row. You really want to get that perfect so that that's a measurement you can trust for the rest of the quilt. I hope this has been helpful.